Hello and welcome to the Creating Crowbar. This is episode 64. It's the 14th of October and I'm joined today, well, I'm Graham Smith, I should say that first, and I'm joined today by two Toms. Hey. Tom A is...
I like to think of myself as Tom F. Yeah, Tom Francis, hello.
And Tom B is...
Tom S. That's the guy I am.
I think that makes everything perfectly clear.
Yeah.
I don't think that A and B should be seen as a value judgment.
No, I think there are a lot of letters flying around and we shouldn't attach judgments to any of them.
And also, we're in alphabetical order, don't we, around?
Absolutely.
We've been playing the same game as we've been playing last episode, which was the same game that we've been playing the episode before that, because it turns out that it's just really good.
Yeah, it's
really interesting.
Very, very good. And there's actually, it's both interesting and, worthwhile and really fun.
What game is it?
Shadow of Mordor. Which I keep wanting to say, Shadow of Mordor. For some reason. Last time we talked about it, I hadn't got to the second half of the game, which is it's like a free-roaming Assassin's Creed style game in Mordor. And the bit in Mordor you're in, I think we mentioned this last time, is just a bit drab. It seems maybe weird to complain about Mordor being a depressing place, but it is quite a depressing, muddy field. And then it turns out the second half of the game takes place also in Mordor, but in a grassy part of Mordor, and it's quite nice there. Your character even says, it's quite grassy here for Mordor, and then your ghost friend explains that it's because they grow their food here or something, but no, you'd think they were carnivores, wouldn't you? Maybe it's for the animals to graze on and then they kill the animals, or maybe it's, I don't know.
I like the way you've really thought about Orc society. That you're trying to pin down their...
It just really amused me that they tried to explain the fact that they'd got a lush second half. Because I was really welcome. I didn't need them to explain it. I was like, thank God it's not muddy fields again.
Definitely.
But they sort of tried to make it seem like, this is explained somehow. This makes sense. But it's really cool, actually. It's like a coastal area and has raging seas and storms and stuff. And more importantly, in the second half of the game, you get an ability called Brand, which means that instead of stunning or draining orcs, you still do those things, and that gives you some health and ammo when you do it. But it also leaves a permanent blue handprint on their cheek and means they obey you forever. And it's amazing. It's I knew that was a thing you could do to the captains, because it's all about these captains that are in Sauron's army, and how do you pronounce it? Is it Sauron? Sauron. It's all about these basically mini bosses, and they're all individually randomly generated, and you have ongoing relationships with them. And I knew you could turn them to your side and kind of send them off to do things for you in a quite limited way. But I didn't realise it also just applied to every orc in the game or Uruk. You can just walk up to any of them and just brand them, and then the great thing about it is there's so many obviously turning people to your side is a trope that we've seen thousands of times in games. But there are a bunch of different quirks to the way this works that makes it totally different, because one is they're yours forever. There's no time limit on it. They permanently work for you now. They can never go back to the other side. They just keep fighting for you until they die. But the other quirk is they don't start fighting for you until either someone's attacking you or you tell them to. So, because it's primarily a stealth game, or it's kind of 50-50 stealth and action, I guess, you often want to brand people secretly. You want to sneak up on them, and instead of stealth killing them, stealth brand them, turn them to your side. And if they started attacking everyone at that point, the jig would be up and it would ruin the stealth thing. So instead, the whole stealth section, instead of picking off the guards one by one, you turn them one by one and make them basically sleeper agents. So they're just walking around pretending to be on the other people's side, but at any moment you can press a key and all of them will turn to your side. You can also, and I spent an ability point on this, which is crazy, but I bought the ability to kill them all. All the people who work for me, you're all just going to die now. Which is, it's a kind of a niche thing. On the power menu, you're thinking, why would you ever want to do that? That seems weird. But then it does come up because sometimes it's kind of a testament to the fact that the game is more interesting than it first appears, that there are times when you don't want your enemies to be killed because you want them alive for some reason. Some enemies have intel and you want to interrogate them, and people on your side killing them is really annoying. And I've had loads of times where I've grabbed the intel guy and you put them in a headlock, and then you've got to do some weird brain domination stuff to them. And while that's happening, one of my guys just throws a spear straight through his chest. Or even just some of them have really big axes, and I'll just see an axe come in from off camera, just hit the guy in the head and just send him flying out of my arms and sprawling across the ground dead. Like, guys, I was in the middle of something.
It kind of sucks that you can't put an ability point in telling your people not to attack right now.
No, that'd be ridiculous. Instead, what you do, you press the key, and then all of them tremble, they glow blue, and then their heads explode. And it's actually, because you can upgrade yourself in loads of different ways. The branding thing, if you're doing it from stealth, it's free. If you're doing it in combat, you need to build up your multiplier to the kind of point where you could do either a execution, which would kill any normal orc, or certain stun moves, or the brand, even if they can see you coming. It's instantaneous, always works. But then you've got to build up your combo again before you can do it again. And I've invested all my points into making those combos much easier to do. The combo builds faster. The requirement to unlock, to enable these special moves is half what it used to be. And I've got all these different things that give me bonuses to that multiplier. So I can basically walk into fight, hit 3 people, and then I'm ready to do it. And I can do it twice before I have to recharge. And even if someone hits me when I'm trying to hit 3 people, it forgives 1 hit as well. So I've got basically you unlock easy mode. And now I'm at the point where I can just, for every 3 hits, I can turn 2 people to my side. And that means in a big fight, instead of it being a thing where you kind of whittle down the numbers stay roughly the same, but just the tide turns so that more and more of them are fighting for you until by the end, I often get carried away and instead of stopping at the halfway point where the fight is going to resolve itself and everyone will end up dead, I keep turning into my side till it's 90% of them are on my side and then they all kill the one guy left. And then I realize now I just have a huge crowd of people that I don't have anything to do with. If you press the kill button then, it's pretty spectacular. And your combat multiplier counts as a kill for each person, so it goes up for all of them. And it's kind of disgusting. But it's sometimes useful because the thing I was trying to do, for various strategic and plot reasons, you want to turn captains to your side. You want to grab them and brand them. And you can use them, once you've done that, just to tell them to go and kill another captain. If there's a guy who's pissing you off, just find another guy, turn it to your side, and send the captain after the one you want to kill. Then they will have an event, like a duel, or various things like that. And then that will unfold at... Basically, when the world progresses, that will be resolved in some way, but it's kind of going on while you're running around. So at any time you can go over there and interrupt it. And it really doesn't play out until you arrive or until you die elsewhere. And if you die, then all events that are currently going on all resolve however they would have without you. And if that's a duel between a captain that is on your side and a captain that isn't on your side, there's a chance the guy you turned will be killed and then you'll lose him. There's also a chance he'll just win anyway, just because he's better than the other guy, and then, it'll be resolved. So you could go around turning all of your captains to kill all of the people that you want dead, and then even if you die, it might still work out in your favour, because the progress of the captain hierarchy will just, play out well, and all of your guys will get promoted, and the bad guys will get killed. So you're often trying to turn captains to your side, but you can't just grab them in combat, even if you have your multiplier charged. You have to weaken them so that they can be grabbed. And at that point, of course, that's quite a way into the fight, and 90% of the Uruks are on my side. And so while I was trying to turn all these captains, I had to turn loads of them, I would have to grab them, and then, you get them in a headlock, and it looks like you're using them kind of like a human shield, and you can still move around while you're doing that, and you have to hold the key. So I'm holding down the grab key, and then I have to kind of shuffle out of the fight while this huge crowd of people who all work for me are throwing spears and swinging their axes. And there's a certain moment where after you've been holding them for a while, they kind of get it and they'll stop attacking. But there's this really tense moment where they're all still trying to kill the guy because he's not on their side, but you're holding him and some of the spears are hitting you or going through him and hitting you. And it's just is he going to live through all the horrible shit they're doing to him right now until they realize they should stop attacking him? And so your relationship with these guys is just really strange because they kind of work for you, but they also don't really know, it's my read on it, is that they stop seeing you as an enemy, but they don't change faction exactly. They still think they work for Sauron, and they still think they work for these other orcs until you tell them to attack them, or until they see you getting attacked, and then they're like, oh, but that guy's definitely on my side, so I need to defend him. Because there's loads of infighting with the Uruks anyway, so it's not totally out of the ordinary for them to be attacking their own kind. But the reason I think that is because if someone sees you and then you turn them to your side, the next thing they say is, I'm sure I saw the ranger around here somewhere. So it's like they can't see you, but also they know you're there, because if they see you getting attacked, they'll defend you. So it's kind of like they have a sort of blind spot of you, I think, where they just see you as like an Uruk they really like. So you have this amazing army of sleeper agents who kind of don't really know they work for you yet. And having them kill the guy you're trying to interrogate is a weird moment of, oh, guys, I know you meant well. I am grateful for the help. I really needed that information. Earlier today, I was trying to track down this one guy. I just need to know his weaknesses. So I needed some intel. And I went across the whole land, and I kept finding these intel guys, worms, who, if you interrogate them, you'll get all the intel you need. And every time I found one, he would get killed by somebody, or he'd be surrounded by friends, and I'd start a fight, and in the fight he would get killed, either by me or somebody I turned. So then I stopped turning people, and I started doing executions, and accidentally executed the guy. And then the next one I found, I was just sneaking up behind him, he was totally alone, and then a Caragor, one of the big, feral beasts, just came out of nowhere and mauled him to death and just ate him in front of me. And then, next one I found, I saw a Caragor on the map, and I was rushing over to him. I was like, shit, he's going to get eaten by the Caragor. And then when I got there, Caragor was in a cage. I was like, brilliant. So I was sneaking up on this guy, grabbed him from behind, and just as I did that, a wild Caragor came up and ate him. Like, oh, for God's sake. None of these people stay alive.
Is it a spoiler to ask what is your objective as the main character at that point in the game? Like, I've played the first 40 minutes, and so I understand the main setup.
Generic revenge throughout, I think, is the main...
Just revenge against all Uruks and Sauron and...
Yeah, everything associated with them.
Yeah, I skipped all of the cutscenes, so I don't know the actual plot, but at times, there's a main story thread, and you do, scripted quests for that, and they're rubbish. But they're mostly pretty easy. I think just because the game is pretty easy, like it's... you're brilliant at combat and you're brilliant at stealth. Mm. And if you're using a mouse, then you're brilliant with a bow as well. So like all three of the ways that you can, deal with things are fairly easy to do. But the scripted missions are rubbish, by design, by which I don't mean they're intentionally rubbish. I mean the design of them is rubbish. But then there's just the open world in which there's this hierarchy of captains and you can mess with them any way you like. And it's totally up to you who you want to target and, all that. And then there's also kind of something in between where you will sometimes have a primary objective that relates to that hierarchy. So I had an objective to turn all of the war chiefs to my side. The war chiefs are like the highest ranked people. There's 5 of them. And actually assaulting them is difficult because they're not just wandering around the world. They have a stronghold and they have people defending them. And you have to fulfill certain conditions to get them to even come out of hiding, to face you. So one of the things you can do is turn lesser captains to your side and then try and get them promoted. Or try and get, if a war chief will often have bodyguards, which means when you do face him, all of those captains will show up. So they're captains in their own right, but they serve the war chief. And if you turn all of his bodyguards, then when they show up to defend him, basically, they will be on your side, so you just snap your fingers and they turn on him. That was the highlight for me, actually, was the middle ground, because when it's totally open, it's fun to mess around with, but it's sort of you don't really have a particular objective. It's just kill them all, but they respawn, so it's kind of endless. Whereas when it gives you a specific objective, get this guy into this rank in the hierarchy, then that becomes more interesting. You have the openness of going about it any way you like, but you have focus in terms of what you're trying to do.
It's just nuts to me that there aren't more AAA games that do this kind of stuff. These kind of systemic stories coming out of the system that we've been raving about. In any game that does them, and any indie game that does it. And yet there's so few, why isn't Assassin's Creed more like that? Why hasn't Assassin's Creed always been more like this?
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed would be perfect. You've got a Templar conspiracy right there. You could even just have the kind of Templar Facebook system that you have in Shadows of Mordor, where you go around killing them in a certain order and turning them and stuff.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that they've made a proper game about assassination. It's the sort of definitive assassination game.
Yeah.
And yet, one of the most obvious things about it, the first thing people notice, how much it copies from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it's
and you kind of thinking Ubisoft was so close to Assassin's Creed. They just didn't think to actually change the structure of the game to be, genuinely about killing people or, make that into a system rather than a scripted plot thing.
It's all about power structures, which is what it should be. It should be about, here's, the social hierarchy of this organisation. Dismantle it as you will, using these amazing tools. And that's why it's such a great game.
And actually, maybe separately from Assassin's Creed, but just the idea of turning people to your side is mechanically, Shadow of Mordor proves that it's mechanically really interesting and really fun to play around with, and makes the whole thing feel like a playground and gives you interesting relationships to these people. And actually, there is some stuff later on with the quests where they take people from the hierarchy that you've interacted with in the totally free systems stuff and put them into the plot and say, like, this guy is an important character in this reason. Like, not really a story character, but just he's here. And that's really cool. But yeah, like, so that proves it works mechanically, but then, like, story-wise, it's still just magic flash game stuff that turns them to your side, and then they're automatically on your side and they're there forever. But it'd be cool to have, like, a spy game where when you're assigned to eliminate somebody, killing them is a mission success. But if you can take them alive and you can turn them, then that's a huge win for your spy organization. Cause that is like what most spy dramas revolve around, is like, we need to get rid of this guy, but also if we can turn them to our side, then that's a huge deal. And
also the uncertainty of whether your allies have been turned or not, like the suspicion of your own compatriots is like a huge part of spy fiction as well.
I really wanted Shadow of Mordor to play around with that. Maybe this is my a persistent hang up with me, but I always want, when you give the player a really powerful ability and you're trying to think of like, how can the game end in a way that would be difficult and challenging and change this formula? I always think it would be cool to have your ability used against you. And it would be so great if you're recruiting all these captains to your side and you basically end up building your army. Like you have captains and you've turned Uruks to your side as well. And you start to find, even when you just fire up the game and spawned into the world before you've really done anything, it's a persistent world, and you start to just encounter more turned Uruks just around the place. I don't know if it's like proportional to how many captains you own, or whether just it's because you've turned Uruks and you haven't, some of them are still alive and wandering around. But either way, it's kind of, you are building your faction basically within Mordor. And I think it would be great if you just, at the end, you discovered someone else had branded you at some point and they were just using you to build up this really powerful faction. You've wiped out all the war chiefs and made them all your own people, and now they're all united, they're all on the same side, and now you've made the most powerful faction in Mordor, and you would just be ordered to send it against someone. I guess it's basically the same thing as Bioshock.
It was actually the Caragors all along.
It sounds like it also kind of solves a lot of the traditional problems with death in games. We talked before about how great it would be if there was a superhero game where you were invincible like Superman, but every time you died, the world continued, but say the villains took more control of the city that you were trying to protect and became more powerful. And
this even gives it a really interesting twist where, because there are always events going on and they'll all be resolved if you don't intervene. With a duel, you don't know which way it'll go, but a lot of them are just, this guy is building his power by having a hunt, or he's recruiting followers. And so if you don't interrupt him, you will get more powerful. And so you are thinking about, what's the actual risk I'm going to die? Because if I'm not going to die, I don't need to bother with any of that stuff. I could just kill the guy later, or I can, just focus on the things I care about. But if I'm dying a lot, I actually want to interrupt these fairly easy events just to stop the guy gaining any more power, because when I die, that will progress without me. So the death penalty is kind of like changing all the time. And it makes it a really interesting mechanic. I don't like that the enemies are invincible. Like they're it's very wishy-washy as to when they can come back and when they can't, and when you cut their head off, when they don't.
Yeah, there's no command to cut their head off. It's just a randomly selected animation, is it?
I'm starting to believe the person who told me that even if you do cut their head off, sometimes they can still come back.
Right. With a bag where their head should be. Which is kind of cool, if it happens very occasionally.
I was wondering about that because I guess they could just have the head stitched back on. Because they're the whole point is they're resurrecting the people. Like, they were dead. It's not like they were just very badly injured. They would definitely die.
Yeah.
And, I just find it, I had a bunch of cool stories where someone got away from me and then they came back later, or someone killed me and they came back later, and that's a really strong relationship, and you really want to kill that guy.
Yeah, totally.
And I told a story last week about how, I was hunting this one guy and I got killed by two of his friends, and so all three of them became my personal hit list, and I had to hunt them down. And that was really satisfying. And the fact that they came back after that was just, oh, for fuck's sake. I had the good story. It was done. You won. You've generated real cool story purely from systems. You've done the good thing. And then, nope, they're all still alive again. So, because at that point it's like, okay, ongoing relationship. But now, why would I kill them? What's the point? Why would I even bother to hunt them down? Now it's just, It's just a thing that might work or it might not. And if it does work, you don't know how long it's going to work for. And it makes the whole thing just very muddy and fuzzy. And when you get the brand ability, then it's like, well, I'll never kill anyone again. Because if I turn them to my side, they're stuck on my side forever and they're permanently sold. And I guess, branding is harder than killing, so it makes a certain amount of sense. But then it just removes that choice completely. There's no reason you'd ever kill someone after that.
It's weird that no one notices that their friend walks behind a building and comes back with a giant blue handprint in their face.
Maybe only you can see it because of your elf.
I love the first time I messed around with the brand thing, just using it on like it's sort of introduced to you through a tutorial mission, and then afterwards just using the open world, you just go anywhere and do it. And it's quite good to brand the archers who are on guard towers and stuff, who are kind of watching over a fort or anything, so that when you have the fight, they'll be on your side. Because otherwise they'll spot you branding the other people, possibly. And so I just branded one archer, and then I don't think I intentionally activated him, but I think I was spotted. And so because I was spotted, he activated and started fighting his friends. And the fun thing is all the dialogue and stuff for them attacking the real Uruks, the sort of Mordor-aligned Uruks, is the same as the dialogue for the Mordor-aligned Uruks attacking them. They just have, and also for when two war chiefs legitimately have a fight and their troops fight each other. They both see each other as the traitors. And because I was on top of this tower next to the guy I just turned to my side, he had a backpack full of spears and or javelins, and he's throwing javelins down at his friends. But his friends don't quite notice. Like, they've lost my scent by that point, so they're just wandering around and they're idle. And, so I'm just sitting there listening to this spear thrower going, traitors all around me! And then he's throwing spears down. They don't notice for a while. And then, eventually one of his spears hits one of them in the leg and they're like, what? And then that guy runs over and then he keeps throwing spears and says, I'm surrounded by traitors! And then kills that guy. And then, the guy on the ground's yelling stuff before he dies. But then once he's dead, it goes quiet again. And then you wait for one of the other patrols to wander a range, and then he's like, And so I watched him pick off 5 guys that way before, everyone has a ranged attack, so they can fight back. And eventually, the stuff they were throwing back at him, whittled him down and killed him. I was really attached to the guy by the end of it.
I've been playing a game which also generates a lot of feelings of vengeance and malice towards other people. I've been playing FIFA Ultimate Team. And I spoke about FIFA 15 on the podcast 2 episodes ago, I think it was now, and about how the match engine has changed and how the pace of it is different and how it's tweaked certain values and how all the same bullshit things that were there before are still there now and still annoy the hell out of me. But it turns out it still doesn't matter because I've since played about 60 matches online.
Wow.
In Ultimate Team. And Ultimate Team, if you don't know, turns FIFA into a tactical collectible card game RPG where all your players on your team, you create your team, give it a name, and you get given a shitty squad full of shitty players. And then each player is represented by a card, and that card has certain stats for pace and defense and attack and shooting, dribbling, strength, so forth, and has a number of games left on their contract and has stamina, and then has values for what team do they play for, what country are they from, and then you, by playing matches, earn gold, which you can then spend on an online marketplace for new cards to level up your team and improve your team by buying individual players. Or you can buy packs of cards. So it's essentially just a collectible card game, or it's like football stickers if you ever did that when you were a kid. And you buy a pack, you open it up, see what you've got, that kind of stuff. You also have to be keeping up with whether contracts are running out on your players, and that's a specific type of card, a consumable that you can get inside gold packs and bronze packs and these other card packs that you're getting. And the nationalities of your different players feed into what's called chemistry. So if you've got 2 players on the pitch that are beside each other, there is a link between them. And if they're from the same nation, then they have better chemistry than they would do if they were from foreign nations, or if they play for the same club team, then they have better. And so as well as having like an overall squad rating that judges the quality of all your players, you also have an overall chemistry rating. And it's sort of hard to judge, but the conventional wisdom is always that it's better to have a team of so-so players with really good chemistry against a team with terrible chemistry, but really great players. And so as you're kind of leveling up your team, playing matches, winning, getting points, and it becomes this really interesting tactical card collection game. But at the same time, this is built all around the usual system of FIFA, which is bullshit for reasons previously discussed, but also really compelling and never better than when you're playing it against other people. You've been playing this as well, Tom.
I have. It sounds stupid, but the reason I love Ultimate Team is because it gamifies a game, or that already is. Which sounds crazy, but the football in itself, unless I'm playing against another human in the same room as me, isn't that interesting. Like I'll play the AI for like 10 matches, but then lose interest. But this gives me the persistence, the idea that I'm building something and becoming better, and noticing that I actually this year realised I really, really need from games. So I love Titanfall, for example, but there's nothing about Titanfall that makes me want to play it more than 20 times. And I love Destiny, and Destiny is full of stuff that keeps pulling you back into it. So I love Destiny and keep on playing it, and Diablo 3. And now finally Ultimate Team has given me the same reason to do that for FIFA. And even though I love football, actually, I love the sport and I love football games, this has stopped it from becoming a throwaway commodity, and it's actually become something that I care about a lot more. And it's gotten me back into like the soap opera of football. That's the chemistry system you described. It's just like a soap opera. It's like, oh, these guys really didn't get along in that. They're rivals. They've never been in the same club. They're from different countries. You just can't play them together on the pitch. And this is, if you go down to the pub and talk about England, like 10 years ago, it's the old Gerrard and Lampard can never play together thing in the centre. And this is a mechanical realisation of that exact debate. And you're just playing around with, but instead of just the England team, you've got just the world of footballers there in cards to just play wherever you want. And yes, I think it's actually brilliant, even though it's also a very shrewd way of making lots more money from the people who play it.
It is the big money spinner now for FIFA, more so than people just buying the game. So much so that there's like FIFA World, which is free-to-play online spin-off, which is basically just FIFA Ultimate Team, and it's a slightly older version of the engine, kind of, I guess it's probably aimed at people with low-spec PCs and the Asian market and that sort of stuff. But it makes so much money for them. And I think it's the kind of system that you can play without spending any real money. But I always spend real money. And I spent about 40 quid on FIFA 14 Ultimate Team, and I've spent £12 so far. And I kind of feel like that's part of my problem with it. Because the stuff that it encourages you to spend money on is gold packs. And gold packs are just sticker packs of a bunch of different cards. You don't know what you're going to get. But it's a gold pack, which means you're going to have a certain number of gold cards inside, versus silver or bronze, which are worse teams or worse consumables. And that's just gambling, first of all. You're just gambling that you're going to get something good.
Yeah.
And the odds of you getting something really good, something that you really need or really want, is minuscule. But the reason to do it is that it's the quickest and best way to get lots of contract cards and lots of fitness cards. And you'll find that your team is constantly, every couple of games, one player their contract is expired. And you've either got to take them out of your team and replace them with someone new, or you've got to go to the marketplace and buy a specific individual contract. Getting that, you can do that using in-game money, but they tend to go on the player marketplace for about $650, $700 for like a good contract with a lot of matches on it.
That's that's like £3.
Well, like, it's not that so much as that's about how much you would get for playing a game, a single match, and winning it like 4-0. And really it works out to be, this is like a game and a half you have to play in order to get a contract.
Okay.
And that, first of all, means that you never then have enough points to go spend on a player on the marketplace.
That's taking...
It means that you're just constantly past, like, just before the point where you can feel comfortable and relax, you can never quite keep up with the slow degrading of your team's A, fitness, and B contracts.
Because those games you play to get those points also take one game off of your player's contracts. So they all get closer to death.
You feel like you're spiraling down the drain, and on this, like, you can never quite get your head above water. Whereas if you just spend, like, I spent 12 quid, which was, I think, 1,500 FIFA points, because I think it's points and coins. Coins are what you earn by winning matches, and I think points are the ones you buy, or vice versa. So say 1,500, and the rare gold packs, which have, I think, 3 rares inside instead of 1, or something like that, and so slightly higher odds of getting good stuff in it, is 150. So for 1,500, that was 10. I was able to open 10 packs for 12 quid. And that means that now I've got about 23 contracts, plus about 15 of fitness, plus a bunch of, I've got good players out of it that I can use in my team.
Yeah.
And then I got a bunch of kind of crappy players I didn't want that I was able to immediately just quick sell on the marketplace.
Can you reduce them to crafting materials?
Essentially, yes. Yeah, very much, yeah.
Well, you can either sell stuff to other players by putting it on the transfer market, and essentially it's eBay. You can set a buy now price or set a bid price and it's an auction, or you can just press a button for quick sell and you set it back to the game and you get a much lower rate, but you don't have to go through that faff, and maybe it doesn't sell and you've got to relist it and all that crap. And so now I've got like 30,000 of in-game money as well, which is loads, and that will get me 3 really good players, say, something like that. And so now I feel comfortable and I feel fine and I'm having fun, but I kind of feel like it's a kind of shitty thing on a game which is already like 40, 50 quid.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind so much if I had spent real money on a really good player. That would feel more rewarding than spending real money on a thing which in 2 weeks' time it's just all going to be gone because they're consumables. I'm going to have used them all up.
Well, it's basically like a very carefully concealed energy bar mechanic.
Yeah.
Precisely the same, like, people have railed against that, Facebook games are having, oh, you've run out of energy, pay for more energy. And this is exactly the same thing. They've just dressed it up in footballing paraphernalia. Oh, he's got an injury. Everyone gets an injury, like 1 in 20 games. And, you've got 11 players on the pitch. And, of course, there's built-in obsolescence that is designed to monetize you, basically.
And basically all the reasons you don't like it are the reasons it's financially successful. Because it's really effective. It is creating
it's a good game. Like,
dissatisfaction.
If it was, but I guess the question is, Graham, like, you spent like 12 quid, and you're probably sorted for a couple of months of play.
Yeah.
So if you see it as a kind of subscription fee of £6 a month, is that worth it to you?
Yes, ultimately, which is why I did it.
Fair enough.
And I did it and I never regretted it with FIFA 14, and which is why I was willing, I spend 12 quid on a game, I'm enjoying it enough, I'm playing it every night, and I continue playing it every night. But the reason it's worth it to me is it is removing a little bit of stress from my life, and that stress is wholly artificial and created by an entertainment product.
That is kind of evil, isn't it?
I'm kind of okay with it, because, I feel good about this purchase. I feel much better now. I don't feel stressed. But then you review that decision-making process, and you're like,
They made me feel stressed on purpose to get money out of me. Interesting.
Well, if they sold contracts instead of selling you the magical gambling stick, would that be better? Is it about transparency of purchase, or is it about...
No, it's that it's almost always a consumable, I think, that I'm buying. Because you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get some number of contracts in any gold pack. The players are the thing that you feel like you're really gambling on. And if you read any guide for how to get the best team, they all say, don't bother buying packs, because the odds of you getting a player that you need are really good. It's minuscule.
This is the whole game, right? Like, this is all you get when you pay your 40 quid or...
Oh no, this is a particular mode within it. This is why it's called Ultimate Team, or FUT. It's FIFA Ultimate Team. But then you can just play single player against the computer, or you can play online using just regular
there's
teams.
Tournaments as well built into it.
Yeah, and then there's Be a Pro mode as well, where you can chart a career of a single player.
There's a full game of this as well. It's definitely if I paid £40 and didn't get Ultimate Team, I would still be pretty happy with the features there, to be honest. Like,
that makes me a little bit more, a little bit less pissed off with it. Because, if you decided after I paid my 40 quid I'm not going to pay anything else, presumably you could play this, fine for a while, and then you'd run out of points, right? And then you'd be in a situation. Would you actually be unable to play, or would it just be that you lose your good players and
You'd lose your good players, you'd have to sell them, you'd have to be constantly playing the market. So like a player's contract would run out, you might not have the money then and there, you'd have to play a couple of matches with him in your reserves until you could afford to buy the contract, or you'd have to sell someone else. And so it would just be a slightly shabbier experience, but you could always keep playing. And even with like, you know, like your players get tired, like they literally have energy because they're human beings. So that's the energy mechanic. They get tired, but then you can either sit them out for a couple of matches. I think you can also just not play for like 24 hours or 48 hours.
Oh, right.
I think maybe it does that, but I'm not sure. But either way, it's like, once you have a team of a certain size, it's not that hard to like rotate people out.
I also find it quite an interesting challenge to have a guy, my star left wing guy, be out, then have to just redo my formation and play against a human being, knowing that I've got a weakness on that flank. Like that to me is an interesting tactical challenge in itself. I do like it. I think like you, I've seen how exploitative it kind of is actually, but it is why I still play FIFA and will play FIFA for the next 6 months.
It is. I mean, you really go into like min-maxing in Diablo 3 with sets and stuff like that. It does lend that to the game. And when I was most into FIFA, it was when I was playing it with Rich McCormick at the Beast Gamer office, and we had that spreadsheet.
Oh, yes.
And that spreadsheet was our way of bringing persistence to our friendly games together. Because you can't really do Ultimate Team with just two people playing against each other. And so that was our way of doing it, and it does really lend itself to that. How do you find the online community? Do you play it online, or do you play single player matches with Ultimate Team?
I play single player matches mostly just because the single player tournaments are the most effective way to get gold quickly, I found. But it's not a satisfying challenge because they're terribly easy most of the time. And, it's no fun in overrunning Stoke 12-0 yet again. Online actually, like I've been playing on the PS4 actually, to be honest, and, it's got terrible problems with like connectivity and lag and stuff. So I've had to turn off, plug in and play on my router, and now it's a bit better.
Right.
But occasionally I'll go online and it seems good. Like there's no voice chat or anything. Like I basically hate voice chat if I'm playing with strangers in multiplayer games.
Me too.
I think you can on the PC turn it on, but it's always off by default. And I've never heard a single person say anything.
No, nor have I.
God.
I've enjoyed the matches I've played. I've been killed. I'm not good enough, but I'm not tuned into the meta of FIFA. There is a meta to FIFA, like, people are trying to figure out, I remember playing FIFA back in like 96 or something, and there was a point outside the box where you would always score if you shot with a certain shot. And if you, it was a fight to get to that shot point and then let a shot off, and it was best to get a red card and kill the player with the ball than to let him get to that point. And that's
man, that sounds like a really interesting sport. People smuggling knives onto the field and stuff.
It's basically Blood Bowl at that point, but every FIFA since has had its version of that. And I'm not sure what FIFA 15's version of that is, but they changed the balance. It's like StarCraft 2, the headers are more powerful one year, and next year it's ticky-tacky dribbling, and
Well, I mean, FIFA 14, it was all about corners, and it was all about crossing, because heading was OP.
Oh yeah. They've trimmed that well down.
Yeah, they've trimmed that well down, and to counterbalance that, they've made strikers much quicker. And or they've either made strikers much quicker, or they've taken away the bullshit fake boost and speed that they would give to defenders that wouldn't actually be able to run that fast, which they maybe used to do. And so it's much more about maximizing your team's pace in all instances. It just becomes the most important stat. Because if you don't have strikers who are really quick, then that's really the clearest way to score is to just run past the defenders. And therefore, if you're buying defenders, you want to buy really quick defenders. You want to buy Raphael from Manchester United.
These are real people.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you can, when you're playing multiplayer, are you sometimes playing against the same people? Could they have the same people on their team?
Yes. Yeah.
So you could actually have clones on the pitch.
Yeah. That'll happen quite a lot, in fact.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really weird system in lots of different ways, because it's so abstracted. Because I play online seasons, and each match is against just another single human controlling a completely different team. And although it's a season of a league, there is no league table, because it's just doing matchmaking against whatever strangers happen to be playing at that particular time. And then you get 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, and near 0 for a loss, just like in actual football. But then there's just a kind of marker at which it says before this point, you're going to get relegated. At this point, you're going to hold in your current league. At this point, you're going to get promoted, and at this point, you win the title. And those all determine different amounts of gold you get at the end of that season. And if you get promoted, then basically it just starts matchmaking you against slightly harder opponents, and you just go up in tiers like that. Which is really weird because it's a kind of abstract, invisible league of strangers on the internet. The other thing is that because it's real people, FIFA does stuff like takes the form, like the current performance of those real players in real life, and feeds that back into the game. So if people are really on form at the moment, they'll play better in game than, and vice versa. They also select a team of 11 players to be the team of the week every given week, which are 11 players in the real world that have played well in actual matches, and because they become part of the team of the week, they've got the largest boost to form, but then that plays into the online marketplace because those players will suddenly become really expensive. So there is this really interesting thing of if you've got a player on your team that you bought on the cheap, but he performs really well in real life, when you're watching football, you're like, yes, he's gonna be so valuable. I'm gonna sell him in 3 days' time in FIFA, and make a fortune on this.
The genius of that is that it rewards fandom. Like a lot of obviously the opportunity just to buy players from your own club, and it's like, there's a filter on there for browsing the marketplace that is just, hey, players from the club that you chose. When you first ever boot up FIFA, you choose the team that you support. So I've got Aston Villa, and if I will always be able to see there's a filter for Aston Villa players, and I can have a couple of those guys on my team, and if they get a big win against a big team like Chelsea or someone, then suddenly they'll just, like, in the game, the real world success will kind of reward me for my fandom of that team, which is fantastic.
In terms of weird marketplaces, this ranks. Then it's like Team Fortress 2 hats, and then it's Star Citizen spaceships. Imaginary spaceships for a game that doesn't exist.
Am I mistaken in thinking that actually, the live update service that is part of FIFA now, didn't there used to be a subscription thing that you'd have to buy into?
Maybe they've tried a lot of different business models. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling that many years ago, perhaps 11 or 12, they used to charge kind of subs fee for the thing they just do now automatically by updating everyone's data and feeding into the Ultimate Team market.
I can well believe it.
I'd have to check that. It's good though, despite its obvious evil.
The thing I wanted to say about online matches was, so I think the netcode on PC is much better now than it's ever been. I think it's better than FIFA 14 and certainly better than 13 and 12, which always had really bad problems with lag and disconnects.
Oh shit.
But there's also a weird sense of humour to the community a lot of the time. Like, if you are beating a team 4-0, for example, sometimes they'll just give up and they won't quit out because then they get penalties to the amount of gold and it goes a mark against their account and stuff like that limits them. So sometimes they'll just put the controller down, obviously, and just walk away and you'll be playing against a team which is just standing perfectly still. That's surprisingly difficult because if an AI or like a player has the ball and getting the ball from them is incredibly difficult when they're not moving, because any animation that you can do to kind of kick the ball away from them, before you can reset yourself and move towards that ball, the computer will automatically just move the player that's just lost it back onto the ball. And so it just kind of resets itself. So that's really tricky. But a lot of players will also just start mucking about. Like, they'll just start rushing off into the corners and trying to do keepy-uppies and keep the ball away from you and that sort of stuff and just playing around. That's really fun. But you were saying about the meta, you do certainly see that as well, that people are starting to work out, because pace is such a big deal. For example, buy two really quick attackers and then straight from kickoff do 1-2, which sends one player sprinting off, ready to receive the ball back. And if you wait like 3-4 seconds, just at the point he passes the defence, do a big long through ball forward.
And if he's faster than the defence, then
you can land it on his foot basically, and he'll immediately score. And I've done that a few times, and I've had that done to me a few times.
That's awesome.
And they'll patch it basically. They always do a patch around Christmas, so in a couple of months' time, they'll patch it and rebalance the stuff.
There'll be something else. It's like StarCraft 2. There's a deliberately shifting meta. There's a competitive online community, and there will always be a weakness in the system, and they're happy for that to exist as long as people want to find it.
Yeah. It's why I always wish, though, that it wasn't a yearly iteration, because they will tend to do one patch, and then that'll be it. You gotta wait until next October when the next one comes out, and they'll charge you 40 quid. And it is basically the game is just a patch.
Compare that to Dota 2, where it's free already, and then also it's updated very, very often, and all the updates are free, and then the stuff you buy is just aesthetic things.
I think if it was presented as a subs fee, obviously it wouldn't do as well because people are allergic to that really, but if FIFA was just a subs entity, then £40 a year plus a £12 addendum for a bit of Ultimate Team stuff, that would shake out at less than a tenner a month.
I think it should just be fully free to play, which is what they're doing with FIFA World, which is, free to download and play, but then microtransactions. It's just Ultimate Team. They just took the Ultimate Team chunk on an older version of the engine, and then you go, and that's great. And that seems like it would be much better for the community, because you go see, the Dota 2 subreddit when a new patch comes out, and the buzz of excitement and YouTube videos and everyone pecking over it. Yeah. And you go look at the FIFA subreddit, and it's relatively quiet. And this is a game which is regularly, when it released, the best-selling game in 40 countries around the world in that particular week.
Valve say that I was often wondering why they seem to focus so much on just releasing stuff for their current player base. They're really focused on just exciting their current player base and making sure that they have things to think about. And if they're a really big fan of TF2, then they will tease you with cryptic images that if you really pour through them, you can figure out maybe some clues about what might be coming in a patch in 2 years' time. The Man vs. Machine update, they started teasing that 2 years before they actually released it. And they change their minds all the time about what they're actually going to do, and sometimes the speculation people are coming up with informs that. But I was always curious about, why don't they make more of their public updates, the big landing pages they do for these updates, aren't they more aimed at new players? Because don't you want to get new people into the game? Isn't that most of the potential to, grow the game? And basically, their feeling seems to be that actually getting your current players excited is what brings new players in, because they talk about it, and wherever they talk about it, other people hear them talking about it, and they won't know what the hell they're saying, but they'll just be like, well, that sounds interesting. People seem really excited about this thing. And so that is how they get new players in, is to get their current players just talking about what's going on. So releasing a game once a year and patching it once a year seems like you're missing out on quite a lot of...
It shows in so many different ways in the community as well, because there's that 8-9 month chunk where there is just nothing to think about. If you watch most YouTube content about FIFA, and there are casters that have made careers out of just doing FIFA, there's two things to do. One is goal compilations, which is the best of the week, and that's cool. And the other thing is just opening gold packs to see what's inside. And they'll just do 2-hour-long live streams where they're like, I've just spent 40 quid, I'm going to open 3 dozen packs, and they'll just open the packs and then go, wow, we got a score! And it's the most basic, kind of boring, thoughtless content. And yet, it gets watched by hundreds of thousands of people, and people are making a living doing it. Imagine if they had something interesting to talk about and think about.
Why would EA care if that fury is basically being built up by YouTube around their monetization method? The people are celebrating and screaming about, I spent money on this game! Why would EA ever want to change that? That's surely just being...
Because I just think,
Well, I think it's better if they didn't do that, but...
How much money are Riot pouring into making League of Legends an esport?
Yeah.
And how successful are they being?
Yeah, that's true.
Imagine if EA, with football, which is already a sport, in fact, the most popular sport in the world, and the World Cup final gets watched by 1 billion people, in fact, 2 billion people. Yeah. You could probably make more money than they're making now.
It is true.
Why aren't there stadiums of people cheering as esports players play competitive FIFA?
I can't believe we're spending our podcast telling EA how to make more money. Come on, EA, you're not even trying. You're barely raking in millions.
I guess that big uptick on the financial report for the FIFA going in Q3, and that's the expected bonus, and they've hit their profit margins that they promised the city, and that's something must be hard to get away from, and they'd never be that radical with FIFA, I don't think.
I imagine there's lots of particulars of the licensing deal with FIFA as well, given that they're talking about real players' faces and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
real
true.
names. I imagine there's a bunch of stuff they can't do for that reason. and then just legalities of stuff. But
Slightly surprised they were able to change player stats and stuff like that. Like in the NFL, they're very, very precious about the Madden series and what players get rated, and players take it very seriously. And when players take it seriously, they can take that out on contract negotiations and that kind of thing. So, it's interesting that they've managed to get this system.
Certainly players take it seriously, and that's true in Football Manager. Like Miles Jacobson at Sports Interactive has talked about getting emails from professional football players and saying, my passing's better than 11, what the fuck are you talking about?
I love that.
And there's Andrea Pirlo, who's a Italian professional footballer, one of the most famous over the last 10 years. Wrote an autobiography recently, and part of that is playing FIFA with other matches.
Really?
And how both he and his other teammate would both always play as Barcelona, even though neither of them had ever played for Barcelona.
The aspirations that they had in life that they never realised.
Yeah. And it is a crazy interesting thing. It's with Football Manager, Miles Jacobson has also spoken about like the stuff that they can't do, which is, for example, bribing or corruption scandals, which are obviously a part of actual football.
Backhanders in the Asian community. There's a lot of
like when Juventus were relegated from Serie A because it turned out they'd been match fixing for a decade. You know, they can't do that in the game because they just get sued into oblivion, basically.
This actually goes back to FIFA. Like, I remember I was interviewing one of the guys working on FIFA like a year ago, and I asked them, why don't you put a false diving button in the game? Like, there's a real part of the sport that is cheating. Like, why don't you reflect that? And they were like, well, I think they kind of feel like they're ambassadors for the game. That's how they put it. But at the same time, it must be precious on them from FIFA and from the massive amount of money that they're dealing with in their business, to present football as a squeaky clean, perfectly fair sport in which capitalism and corruption don't distort results.
No one brings a knife on the pitch to stab the guy.
No.
Critical sweet spot. What else have you been playing, Tom?
I've been playing Final Fantasy XIII on PC, which was released last week, or the week before, something like that. And it's a terrible port. And it's in the process of being fixed by Durante, who fixed Dark Souls 1.
So there was a Final Fantasy MMO. What was that one?
Oh, that was 14.
14. Okay, so now we're getting 13.
Yeah, so 13 was released years ago on consoles.
2009. There's 3 games
Yes.
in the FIFA 13, in the Final Fantasy 13 series.
Yeah.
And this is the first of them that's been released on PC?
That's right, the first
So
one.
there is FIFA, there is
FIFA
One
Fantasy
Track Mind. There is Final FIFA Fantasy 13 2.
That exists. And also there's a Lightning Returns as well, which is the main character from 13, which is also in a different console game as well. So 13 is one of massive letdown. Not only in terms of the port, which is absolutely dreadful. If you just download it on Steam and boot it up, it will only boot up in 720p resolution. No matter what screen you have or anything, and it'll just letterbox it or do whatever. But whatever it has to do to cram that resolution onto your screen. There are no sound options, there are no graphics options. You can't change any of it. It's a 59 gigabyte install. Mostly consisting of uncompressed video.
Oh my god.
And it's basically, as a port, it's a total disaster. And they've obviously put absolutely no resources into making this work on PC correctly. Fortunately, the Durante modder has released a fantastic patch that lets you just show it in 1080p, it just fixes the resolution stuff. And you're not going to, it gives you a load of graphics options like SSAO and stuff if you want that. And I'll put a link in the show notes for the patch if you buy the game. But the game itself is a tremendous disappointment to me as a Final Fantasy fan. Someone who's loved the series since 7, actually. It was quite a formative game for me, really. But the brilliant thing about Final Fantasy is that it was absolutely reliable as being a gorgeous, multi-million dollar kind of beautifully produced RPG that would come out every few years. And yet, every single time, it would completely revamp its battle system. It would give you a completely different world, and it would change all of the characters, and it would change all the politics of the world and all of the kind of the lore behind it. It would completely revamp. It was a new game every few years, basically. And I can't think of any other major franchise that takes that amount of risk, that actually is brave enough to say, okay, well, Final Fantasy X was successful. So here comes Final Fantasy XI was an MMO. Final Fantasy XII, they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make it kind of like an MMO, and you'll control a squad and be in an open world, and instead of leveling up your characters and doing the whole turn-based battle system, what we'll do in Final Fantasy XII is we'll let you program the AI of each of your individual party members, and then you'll automate and go into battle. And as you level up, you'll gain new AI commands that you can slot into your tailored AI kind of structures. And this is, like, for me, one of the best, most overlooked RPG ideas in gaming is Final Fantasy XII's AI construction system. And they just did that and never ever revisited it. They just did it as an experiment for one game. And they got the Artist and Vagrant story, which is a fantastic PlayStation 1 RPG. Absolutely beautiful kind of art style. They got those artists in and created something quite extraordinary. The story was duff, but it was a fantastic game. And then for Final Fantasy XIII, it's a game about pressing up and going up corridors, and then you encounter an enemy that is as wide as the corridor, and then it will go into a battle, and then you will press auto attack over and over again, and you will win.
Shouldn't auto attack be a thing you press once and then it
No, I fucking wish it was, Tom, because you will have to press the auto attack button at least like 7 or 8 times in a fight in order to complete. And the battles are beautiful. They are kind of everyone's on cooldown bars that are expiring at different rates, and so enemies are attacking in different turns. So it's not quite turn-based; it's a kind of real-time element to it. And when you press your attack, they somersault backwards from each other and change place, and the whole battlefield's moving and turning. It's not like the old-fashioned turn-based strategy system where the bad guys line up on one side and the good guys line up on the other, and they exchange hits. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and yet it doesn't show you anything about that combat system that's interesting for the first 6 or 7 hours of the game. Like, you can get through the first 5 hours by auto-attacking, just almost entirely, apart from a couple of boss fights. And the environment, Final Fantasy's always been about giving you an open world at some point. And in Final Fantasy VII, it gave you the High Wind, which is this fantastic airship. And it happens quite a long way in, but as soon as you get it, it's this extraordinary moment of the game just opens up. I didn't even think the game was going to open up. I was just happy with this city-to-city experience where I was walking around the world map and kind of hemmed in by mountain ranges. And then they suddenly give you this airship, and the whole place is yours to explore. You can just go anywhere, and that was just such an extraordinary feeling. And then for 13, they've just gone and given you fucking corridors. Just it was a straight line from checkpoint to checkpoint, then it'll switch to a different character, and you go in another straight line. And it's absolutely depressing. It's really thoroughly depressing fall for a series that's been relentlessly inventive up until that point. And it makes me really sad. I'm told that it opens up around the 30-hour mark. Which is a dreadful sentence to associate with any game, really, isn't it?
I remember something about this when it came out on PlayStation, I guess, was where it came out originally. I remember it being very, very highly anticipated, and then there being the sort of that semi-muted reaction you get when something that everyone thought was going to be great isn't so great, where they're not, it doesn't get a kicking exactly, but everyone's the excited roar trails off into a kind of this is quite linear. And then I remember that thing about it opens up after 30 hours being trotted out in its defense, which always seems like a tough sell.
Isn't a common line with JRPGs that they then turn into grindy shitfests after 40 hours?
Well, I've yet to find out. I'm determined to go through. I always finish every Final Fantasy game. And the combat system actually has loads of merit to it. That's one of the depressing things about Final Fantasy XIII, is that it thinks you're an idiot. The degree to which it drip feeds mechanics. Hey, how about you're 2 hours into the game, you want to cast a spell? That's how you cast a spell. You press down, and then you press magic, and then it's like that. It feels like that. And what the combat system is really about is letting everyone auto-attack and kind of do their thing that you set them up to do. And then there's something called paradigm shift, where you press a button, and you can tailor every party member's role in the combat. And you can, if you shift paradigm, then you can have everyone attacking in Ravager mode. In which
well, that follows logically.
Which they'll just relentlessly attack and build combos on things. And then you can switch it to having one medic and one debuffer and one buffer. And that's a team you set up beforehand, and you can give, they've got separate skill trees for each role. And then, okay, great, I've got the debuffs and I've healed everyone. I'm going to switch to this defensive mode because that guy's powering up an attack. And, at a high level, the combat is about kind of controlling the meta flow of the battle, moment by moment, and just kind of is about high level strategy, that you're committed to on the fly. It's like, okay, I see where the fight's going. I need to change up. Bam, I'll go to this mode I've pre-designed for my characters, and they'll go into that. And that's incredibly satisfying and is genius, really, because it's absolutely spectacular the way it unfolds. And it's also quick because battles become very challenging, and you have to react quickly and change your modes and understand what all your characters are capable of doing. But that it takes 10 hours to even approach that level of complexity is just wrong. That should never happen in a game. It's like with Shadows of Mordor. I get frustrated that the branding thing isn't just a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I get frustrated with Far Cry 3 when it ties incredibly important abilities to the shitty story.
Yeah.
And just don't.
I groaned about this on Twitter, and some people agreed, but a lot of people said, but if they gave you all the abilities right at the start, it would get too confusing, all the different controls and stuff. But both Far Cry 3 and Shadows of Mordor, I don't know about Final Fantasy, already have a power progression system in there, which isn't tied to the plot in any way. Just whatever you do, you get rewarded with experience, basically, and you go up in power levels, and then those power levels unlock these abilities, and they've laid it all out. It's all, you can see it on all one screen, all the different abilities you can get, the power tiers at which they'll unlock. All of that is perfectly designed, except they're just little gold lock symbols on a bunch of them. And no matter what power level you are, you can't have them unless you play the right plot mission to unlock them. And it's just because that plot mission has a nice tutorial for how to use that thing. And okay, that's nice, but I shouldn't have to have the tutorial before I can have, like, if I'm, if I am level 30 or something and I haven't done any plot missions, maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's not just coincidence. Maybe it's not that I don't understand that there are plot missions. Maybe I fucking hate them, or I'm stuck on one and I don't want to do them. So why, if I unlock that ability and I didn't have the tutorial, what would go wrong? Would I die? Would it be the end of the world? Would I then uninstall the game after the enormous amount of playtime I've sunk into it to unlock that thing? I think I would probably just be mildly confused for a little bit and then figure out the controls and then be like, oh, cool, now I've got a really good ability.
Yeah.
I think it would make those plot missions less hateful as well. Because imagine you're trying to craft a 30-hour-long colonialist satire, or whatever the fuck it was, and you know that your 9th mission has to be part of that story, but also teach people about double takedowns.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a big problem generally. Like, teaching people how to play your game shouldn't take longer than a few hours. Like Valve are the masters of this, like with Portal, for example. But even they, I think, go through their commentary and stuff, stretched out those concepts even further than they thought they would have to, actually, with people playing it. That's why they only give you one portal gun, and then...
you can only control one end.
One end of the portal, and then it gives you the second end, and they really places it out carefully. But that's changing time and space in a way that's never been done in a shooter before. Like, it's not, how about I press auto attack in a different way in this combat in Final Fantasy, an RPG. Final Fantasy is played by Final Fantasy fans. They've wrapped their heads around the materia system in Final Fantasy VII and the junctioning system in Final Fantasy VIII. They're cool. They're okay with this kind of stuff. They can get their heads around a fucking attack system or a paradigm shift system, if you explain it correctly.
I guess maybe that's it. They just wanted to broaden the audience, though. I wonder if FIFA 12, because these games must cost a fortune to make, given all the cutscenes and stuff like that. That alone must cost a lot of money to animate and so forth.
You did say FIFA again just now.
No. Shit. Alright. Are there any JRPGs on PC that I should play? Because I don't really know the genre that well, and I'd like to get into it. Are they all the good ones on console, though?
My favourite JRPG is probably Final Fantasy VI, which was originally released as Final Fantasy III, I think.
Oh, for God's sake. Don't make it easy, do they?
No, but I don't think it ever... I emulated it on SNES back in the day, and it's actually so hard to get hold of one. So I actually owned a SNES, but you can't buy it anywhere. Because it's on a limited release in America and marketed as a different number to the actual game it was. But that is an absolutely fantastic and really, really funny. It's got a fantastic sense of humour to it. It doesn't take itself seriously in the way that you think Final Fantasy would. It's got just a terrific kind of self-deprecating tone to it. And, for example, there's a guy you have, Saber or something, who is just like, does wrestling moves on things. And his ultimate, his kind of limit break is that he can like suplex things. And at one point you fight a ghost train. And so you go, wait a minute. I can see what this is. Can I suplex the ghost train? And there are fantastic YouTube videos just showing him just doing that. He just like, adorable little sprite character runs up to the ghost train, which takes up half the fucking screen. And the ghost train just like, the whole sprite rotates. And then he kind of hops upwards and slams it into the ground and does loads of damage. And terrific, fantastic game.
I think we have a podcast title.
Everyone can suplex the ghost train. That's what I miss about Final Fantasy. Like, it's become so obsessed with itself. I'm quite excited about Final Fantasy XV though, actually.
Is there much information about it?
Not much, but the only like substantial video they showed, suggests that the game is you in a Cadillac on a road trip across an open world full of dragons.
Okay.
And kind of knights with guns. And then every now and then you hop out and you kill things. And it seems as though it might be like it's guesswork at the moment because they've really revealed very little of it. But it looks wonderfully anachronistic. The four main like characters look like kind of terrible parody of West Side Story gangsters in a kind of Final Fantasy style, anime style. And that's kind of awful. But the rest of it looks fucking amazing. So I'm quite excited about it.
What was 14 then?
14 was also an MMO.
Yeah, 11 and 14 were the MMOs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because
I reviewed 14 when it was first released for PC Gamer, and I gave it like 30. And I said, well, last line of the review was, it can never be fixed. And then Square spent like 5 years and millions of dollars on fixing it, and apparently it's alright now. So they proved me wrong, and fair play. It's apparently okay now. But yeah, I don't really care much for Final Fantasy MMOs really. Final Fantasy, a series that
it is
lost its way.
And it's pretty amazing. I think that like the weirdest thing about it is just that they consider it a series at all, and that it's, you know, oh, these are all, it just goes one to the next, and oh, that one happens to be an MMO, sure. Then we went back to the single player thing, and then we went back to MMO again, and then.
It's in the spirit of the series, though, like in the way that it reinvents itself every single time. And it's lovely because it rewards fans so much by giving you these little touchstones. And it'd be like, Chocobos, of course, in all of them. And there are little kind of signatures, and of course the art as well. The anachronistic combination of ornate, beautiful, futuristic architecture and guns, and also swords, and also knights, and just mashing medieval history into kind of mecha anime in a kind of really interesting way, and you just get loads of interesting, crazy stuff out of that series. It's really inspiring. But don't buy it on PC yet until Durante has completed his fixes.
And
also don't play it. Just don't play it. Go and play Final Fantasy VI, however you can acquire it. Then perhaps play Final Fantasy XII if you have the patience. That's what I recommend.
Shall we do questions from questions?
Yes.
Tom writes, not either of these Toms, I hope.
Tom C. Tom Questioner.
Dear Luddites and Dissidents, in your podcast last week, you briefly talked about the colour of human skin. Did we? And why it was often so poorly done. I spent most of last year as a colouring artist painting skin at Madame Tussauds, and you would be amazed at how many weird colours are used to make skin look realistic. David Beckham is mostly a combination of bloody red and pale lime green. I'm not surprised by that. No. Whereas Martin Luther King Jr. had a whole load of deep purple and bright orange.
Wow.
The realism is achieved when you take a small step back and get the interaction of the combined mottled colours rather than picking a mean colour. While the heads are wax and have a certain amount of translucency which allows for a faux subdermal scattering effect which helps, the hands' bodies are usually fiberglass, so you just have to deal with it being opaque and they come out fine. Maybe I should go into painting texture for computer game characters. Anyway, just thought you'd be interested. Best regards, Tom Diddley Young Pom.
I love that email.
Tom D. That is
much interesting.
Yeah, that's great.
For anyone who doesn't know, Madame Two Swords is a place where they have wax replicas of real people.
In fact, the subskin scattering he's talking about is replicated in games. It's called subsurface scattering. I'm pretty sure they use that to model light reflecting off skin and stuff.
Huh. John writes, so a little behind the times, just listening to episode 61, and you bring up the question of difficulty in games. I felt compelled to relate that the most fun I've ever had with Civilization V has been when I started a massive map with no other players, barbarians, or city-states. Is it wrong that I enjoy the lack of challenge presented, or is it fine to enjoy the core mechanics of a game so much that you remove all distractions? Great podcast, ludonarrative dissonance, etc.
Damn it, I got to
Here's John. That sounds awesome. I do that in games sometimes, where I just turn everything off. If there's I like turtling in real-time strategy games.
Yeah, it's great.
And it was especially great in the Command and Conquer games, say, where you could, for example, build walls around your bases and place Tesla coils and get it all really nice.
Yeah.
And it would be really annoying when you'd be attacked by an enemy.
What are you guys doing? I used to, when I'd won a match in Warcraft 1, the original Warcraft, once you'd kind of destroyed their main buildings, it was possible to completely cripple an enemy, but the match wouldn't end. I think you had to destroy every single building, maybe in every unit, before it declared victory back then. And so once I had them basically crippled and they just had like one farm left, I would then just kind of conquer the land and just expand everywhere and build massive metropolises and, huge armies. And then I had nothing to do with the army, so I'd make them fight each other, because you can issue attack commands between your own people, and have like a sort of grand tournament to see which orc wins the the one-on-one duels. And there's definitely a lot of value in just like messing around with no actual challenge.
Alex asks, hi Creighton Crowbar and Graham's probably now living beard. With the new Borderlands out soon, and the lackluster response you guys seem to give that series, I was wondering if personality can be enough to carry a game with mediocre gameplay. The latest trailer for Borderlands 2.5, which I think is actually called Borderlands the Pre-Sequel, is so over the top and silly that I can't help but smile and want to get involved. What games are a bit crap, but have such a winning personality that you can't help but love them? Alex.
I'd just like to say I really love Borderlands 2.
Yeah, it's
a huge fan of it, yeah. And even on just a combat mechanics level, it had so many interesting relationships between the enemies, like robots, healing each other and buffing each other and doing weird things that caused you to really think about how to attack them, and each limb was individually targetable, so you could blow off their arm if that particular weapon was the thing that was causing you trouble, or you could aim for different parts to get like critical hits and stuff. I think it was a really good game mechanically.
I never really played Borderlands 2, I didn't think, but I didn't like the shooting in Borderlands 1.
Yeah, it got better, I think. The weapons you found were just more interesting in Borderlands 2. It took a while to open up early on, you don't find anything that good, and then after an hour or so, you start to get much more interesting things. And, the classes are better designed, I think, like special abilities and stuff. The assassin was really good, that's what I played as, where you can go invisible and then do a critical melee attack when you come out of invisibility, and then all of your upgrades make that more spectacular and healing you. And the final one is when you come out of invisibility and you backstab someone, if that kills them, you recloak and get it all recharged. So as long as you can always be killing someone with that, you can stay invisible forever.
There is a game, and I played a free version of it earlier this year, but it's out at retail now, called Hyphen, which is sort of neon coloured lines forming a maze, and then you control hyphen. It's just a line, but it's constantly rotating, and then you have to fit your way around shapes. And it's kind of an interesting puzzle game, but there's not a lot to say about it, and it's really easy to forget and just get kind of a little bit tired by the presentation of it. But then a couple of weeks ago, a game came out called Roundabout, where you play a limousine, which is constantly revolving.
Right.
And it's kind of set in the 70s, and it's got live action cutscenes, which are kind of cut together with stock footage and real non-actors. reading a script, which is kind of deliberately kind of cheesy and strange.
Okay.
The star of that is my friend Kate, who was a UI designer on Guild Wars 2 at the time. So if you're ever wondering who the main character in that game is.
And the world is, you're a limousine, so you're driving around a city, constantly rotating, and so it's really colourful, and it's buildings, and it's city streets, and it's people, and it's the almost exact same game as Hyphen, but it's just got so much personality and so much colour to it, and such a great theme and funny cutscenes that it makes it 10 times the game.
I think there are loads and loads of games that this applies to, including every single adventure game that is popular.
Grim Fandango.
Monkey Island, I played those games for the characters and the humour and the personality, and never for the mechanics. Jazzpunk, mechanically extremely simple, but absolutely glorious because it's so packed full of jokes and it's so joyful. I'm increasingly convinced that Psychonauts isn't a good game, but I love it, and it won't stop me from loving it because, again, the sense of humour and the personality, like Lungfishopolis, in which you go to a city full of giant fish.
No, they're normal-sized fish, but because they're smaller than you, they think you're a giant, so you're stomping through their city as if you're Godzilla.
That's right, and they're terrified of you and they're running away from you.
No, not the orphanage!
And it's kind of, if you look at it in cold terms, it's just a gimmick level where you're bigger than, and it's not really very challenging, but it's wonderful.
So do you think, I didn't like Psychonauts as a platform. I found it very, very frustrating and fiddly and awkward once it got difficult. Early on, it's fine. But I still did enjoy the game. And I think it's maybe one up on the adventure games where the game part of it is basically garbage. It's puzzles and the puzzles aren't good. And so there's nothing else. It's just bad puzzles. Whereas Psychonauts is a platformer, and so it's fun in some ways, until it gets brutally hard. But also, the personality part sort of shaped the levels as well.
Yeah.
And so even when they were difficult and frustrating, I still appreciated, the entire format of this level, and even the controls and everything are all a function of what's inside this person's head and, the character of that person, and each one is unique and really interesting.
There are a few brilliant levels, there's the, conspiracy level, which is set in the suburbs, these kind of shattered suburbs that go off in crazy angles, and gravity is mental, but there are people in trench coats everywhere, whispering vaguely conspiratorial things at you, meet me by the evening, we'll swap the briefcase, and that kind of thing. There's so many buttons. The luchador level as well, where you'll be chased by a giant bull through this neon kind of, it's extraordinary really, how
the funny thing is, it's closer to being a good game than the adventure games, I think, in terms of if you stripped out all of the content and it was just mechanics, then obviously the adventure games would be terrible. Whereas I can also be kind of, a frustrating platformer and, too fiddly, but almost good. But the net effect of that was I've never completed Psychonauts because I simply couldn't. I just couldn't get past certain bits, and I got really irritated with them, so I stopped playing. Whereas with the adventure games, just look up a walkthrough and then you get through it. Yeah. So I know the full story of all of the LucasArts and Double Fine adventure games I've played.
Jamie writes, "Hey, this isn't really a question, sorry. The forums are putting together a community Steam curator list, and we've got a thread for voting for which games to add. It's called Community Curation in the Games Discussion subforum. And link it in this email, but spam filters. Anyway, I was wondering if you could mention this on the podcast." And it turns out we can.
You just have. That sounds cool.
We'll put a link in the show notes, along with, I suppose, one to our Steam curator list, which I don't know if we've updated since we first created it, but
I'll do that over the weekend.
It does have games on there.
Yeah, we'll do it.
It's games we've talked about favourably, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily just our favourites.
So Final Fantasy XIII is not going on there. But Psychonauts might.
Another Tom D.
Good Lord.
Writes, "Hello, gents. With Civilization Beyond Earth a few weeks away, it got me thinking. With the mod scene Phyrexis usually encourages, how long will it take someone to reverse the concept of branching out of humanity's future and instead start from the past and slowly progress until modern times?"
I feel that might be somewhat redundant.
Now my real question. I've been playing a ton of Half-Life 2 mods lately and completely ignoring my backlog, and I can't stop. Has a mod or collection of mods ever had you hooked to a game to such a degree? Has a mod ever turned a bad game into something special? You don't have to mention Dota. Which was a mod for Warcraft 3, which was already good in the first place.
Yeah. I got a lot of fun out of Counter-Strike Source, using a script called Zombie Strike Source. So it wasn't even a full mod.
That's my answer as well.
Oh, really? All it did, it was really just a sort of a way of setting up a game without changing any of the rules of Counter-Strike. All it did was you and whoever you're playing with would be on one team, and then 32 bots would be in the other team, and they only had knives. And so it was the proto Left 4 Dead. Before there was a Left 4 Dead, there was Zombie Strike Source. And you would just have all the Counter-Strike weapons, and you could, buy them the same way you normally could. And it sounds trivially easy, but it wasn't. It was actually quite difficult. Depending on how many people you had. If you had, more than two, it would be trivial. But if you had two, and if you had enough bots, you could kind of I think you could maybe get like 40 or something in there if you tweak some settings. It was just fucking awesome. You just have, proper moments of, standing back to back, one of you with a deagle and one of you with an AK, mowing down the hordes and trying to cover each other, and then eventually one of you runs out of ammo and has to reload, and they start getting cut down and screaming for help, and it all goes horribly wrong.
Total War has a fantastic history of immense mods. Go back to Rome. If you love history, there's sorry if I get this wrong, Europa Universalum or something like
Universalis?
that. No, that's actually a different game. No, I've got that completely wrong. But
wow.
We'll find in the show notes which actually is an incredible historical study of Roman units, and puts every Roman unit you can find historical evidence for into the game with different armor and different shields and stuff like that.
Huh.
Also, Darth mods for each iteration of Total War has, according to many corners of the community, fixed those games, or just made them harder and just made them a different experience, really. Total War modding community is immense.
So speaking of Half-Life 2, as the guy did, S-Mod is my favourite for that, in terms of just giving a completely nutty experience, but not trying to be its own thing exactly. You still play through the Half-Life 2 campaign, but now you have banana bombs and throwing scissors and, every weapon they could think of, they just piled it in there. And, I really like that philosophy of modding, or that kind of style thing, because you don't see them that much these days. Like back in the day when we started, the Extra Life section of PC Gamer, 10 years ago, it was now, it was like mods were kind of the main thing, and then indie games were this other thing that they technically exist, but we don't really come on that much.
Usually crap.
Free, I'm talking about free indie games particularly, because it was the section for, stuff that you could, either add to for free or play for free. And mods are the main thing, really. And back then, these mods were pretty common. For any given game, there would be the nutty mod that just was the same game, but with all the kind of stuff added. And you don't see them that much anymore, because now we mostly talk about games themselves, free games and indie games. And a lot of the kind of creativity and crazy stuff has gone into those, and that still exists. But you don't get to see that weird mishmash of a beautifully made, incredible, story-driven, epic experience like Half-Life 2 with banana bombs and throwing scissors.
Yeah.
My favourite thing in Smod was they added a bunch of, basically stuff from Fear. They added the slide kick, and then they added slow-mo as well, which you could do in Half-Life 2 with just a simple console command anyway. But that was super satisfying to just run around City 17 kicking Combine soldiers to death.
Yeah. There used to be one for Quake 2 called Ultimate Quake, and it was by a guy who went on to be lead programmer at Raven, Mike Gamalt. And it was just, it's Quake 1. And you just play Quake 1, but you chose a class at the start, and you could be Xena Warrior Princess, you could be a Jedi, you could be Fremen, you could be the Borg, you could be just anything Mike Gamalt liked in any franchise of any kind. And he would give each of those their own skin and their own model and their own special abilities. If you're the Borg, you could just run up to anyone and press the assimilate button and turn them into Borg, and they'd work for you. If you were Xena, you had the chakram thing that you could throw and whatever her other abilities are. I can't remember. If you're a Jedi, you had a lightsaber, and it would just, you weren't holding it, it would just hover in front of you, and you could see the handle with no hand on it. But it would just jib anything it touched. So you just turn around and just move it through shamblers and stuff and jib them all. And I think you might have had some Jedi powers. I can't remember what they were though. And you could also be a mutant, which would give you a random set of abilities, like some of those and some other random stuff. But one of the You could also get negative abilities if you did that, and one of them was just weak heart, and that just meant at a random time you would die. It wouldn't, be predetermined, just, I guess every millisecond there was a very, very, very small chance that you would die. And so, at some point that might just happen to you, and there's nothing you do about it.
Basically all I did in my teenage years was play mods, because I didn't have very many games, and so I would just mod Half-Life 1, Unreal Tournament, and whatever the latest version of Quake was.
Oh.
And so I played hundreds of them, and I always used to really like, and not many games do this, but Unreal Tournament obviously had the mutator system, so you could really easily stack lots of tiny mods.
Yeah.
And one I loved, which would let you, I'm sure it's called like Dr. Strangelove or something like that. It would, the Redeemer?
Yes.
Which would let you fire like a nuke, basically. It was the equivalent of, I guess, the BFG for Quake 2, and would destroy huge amounts of people. But this mutator would let you ride it after you fired it. Awesome. You could always do the thing with the Redeemer of, if you fired with the right mouse button, I think you could control it, remote control it. But this meant that you could remote control it while standing on top of it.
And it seems like a drawback in some ways.
Yeah. But it was great. First of all, it was just like this daredevil thing to try and like steer around corners without crashing into anything when you would obviously die.
Yeah.
But if you ever played it online, it was great because you would just see people flying around the sky with this giant rocket standing atop of it.
That's amazing.
That was a lot of fun.
That's so good.
I really hope that the new version of Unreal Tournament, which is obviously kind of community supported,
super open source as well.
Yeah.
Like, if they've already released the code to people, which is extraordinary. Actually, it's worth mentioning that Darth from the Darth series, Total War, Nick Tomadis, is releasing his own strategy game. I believe it's in early access right now.
Apparently, it's brilliant as well. Tim Stone really likes it. It's Ultimate Gettysburg.
Yeah, that's it. And it's beautiful and apparently really good. I've played it about 10 minutes ago. I need to do it properly.
Henry writes, Dear Cretaceous baryonyxes. I don't know what those are.
Nico will know what that is.
As all of you work or have worked in games journalism, I was interested to know whether you ever have to fight over who gets to review each game. I'm imagining this in a similar manner to how Hollywood movies present news reporters competing to be the one to get the big story. Does this happen at all with highly anticipated video games? Cheers, Henry.
Fist fights mostly.
Shivs in the dark in a car park normally is that's good.
There would always be, I think, a certain amount of jealousy at PC Gamer when Tom inevitably would get to review the latest Bethesda RPG.
But yeah, so that was when I joined, I was the only fan of the Elder Scrolls series. No one else liked it. They'd given it, I think it gave Morrowind quite a middling review at PC Gamer, and I was a fucking huge Morrowind fan, so I think even in my interview where it came up, I was lecturing them about why it's so much better than they said it was. And so then when Oblivion was coming up, I think I was kind of the natural choice because I've been just yelling about Morrowind for like 2 years. And, it was good to be the biggest fan of a series in the office. Like that's kind of, because that's the most important thing is to figure out whether it lives up to the previous game. Like the people who most want to know whether the next Elder Scrolls game is good is the people who like the last one. So, if you don't have anyone who likes the last one, you can still give it a fair review, but it will be just of interest to a different set of people. So yeah, it was good to be a big fan of certain things.
It was always the thing of, I think, Mirror's Edge that you and I both really wanted to review.
Yeah.
And you did it for PC format.
Oh yeah,
though?
you got it for PC Gamer, so in Assault PC format.
This is what actually happens: is that one person gets to sign the review, the other person just freelances it for someone else. But a lot of the time, like, it's what's going to happen. Like, Chris is going to do, a big upcoming game for PC Game, and I'm doing it for another publication that's already decided. So we'll get to review everything eventually. But yeah, it's quite diplomatic these days. Everyone puts their name down by the game, and then there's some mild arguing. But it's decided more on who has the time than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah.
On staff. Especially if it's a big RPG or something.
There was something, Alex said in his review of Costume Quest 2 on RPS, or what I think of Costume Quest 2, which was that he should add, as he should to all reviews in big block capitals, I played this very, very quickly and in very long sessions because I was reviewing it.
Yeah.
And it's true, that was I was all very eager to review stuff, but then, I always thought that when I left, that would be the thing I'd already missed because reviewing is my favourite thing to do. and I haven't missed it at all. And I think it's partly because now I get to play things at my own pace, and I think games journalism has cured me of my impatience for games, because I would get to play them earlier, preview and stuff, and it would always be, really, really exciting to do that. But then, like, in retrospect, you realise I kind of spoiled that game a bit for myself by playing a sort of broken version of it really early, or playing the first hour of it, like, 3 different times at different events, and then not having that experience fresh when it came out. And so now when I get, like, if I'm at a show like EGX or something and there's, big queues to play the next big game, like, really early, I don't want to. Even if I could do it instantly, I'd just rather wait till it's actually done and I can play the whole thing. And yeah, same for reviews. I'd rather wait till the whole thing's finished and then play the whole thing at my own pace and however I like.
I mean, like, you've got to feel sorry for whoever has to review Divinity Original Sin, which is an enormous and very slow game, but, you have to plow through it.
Chris, I believe.
Yeah, you did a good job, but it's like, you're not going to get the full experience, are you?
It was always the MMOs were the hardest thing.
Jesus Christ, I used to do a lot of those in PC Gamer, because when you're coming up, you just do whatever you're given, or whatever you can, basically. So I reviewed a lot of MMOs.
It was like you find the freelancer that's desperate enough to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's it. You're doing all the MMOs now.
I did Rift, and I did Final Fantasy XII, which was shite, and then loads of other stuff. But, it's good experience as well.
There's just no way to make it cost effective if you're a freelancer, and no one in office has time to sink enough hours into it.
Yeah.
And it's increasingly a problem, I guess, as more and more shooters, for example, start to trend in that direction. That kind of long meta game, like Destiny, basically. Hard to review things. The best thing I ever did was not review Dishonored, because it meant that I think Dishonored works really brilliantly if you just do a mission a day. Yeah. And even the missions are structured in such a way that you wake up in your pub and you go off, you do a mission, and you get back on your boat, you come home and you go to bed again. And that's how I played the entire game, was just one mission at a time like that, and I enjoyed it so much more, I think, than I would have done and explored so much more than if I was charging through it.
I totally found that with Destiny as well. Like, Destiny is a game you play for an hour a day, and within that hour, like, it's a long-term grind, but it offers you a lot of chunked variety within it.
Jizz Central on the forum writes, why is it so hard for devs to learn the right lessons from the games they make? Playing Hitman Blood Money started me thinking about how game development evolves, and the people that make these games sometimes misunderstand what makes them great. The people who made Blood Money went on to make Hitman Absolution, Velvet Assassin, and Kane and Lynch. Did they make Velvet Assassin? That wasn't.
It was some of the same people who worked on Blood Money. It was a different company. They left.
I'll give mini ninjas a pass, he says. This is not the output of people who realise why people love Blood Money. Ironically, Blood Money was the 4th in a constantly improving series of games. It just went wrong at that point. Some companies are just as bad, but in the other direction, iterating so slowly as to be making virtually, identical games every year, FIFA, Call of Duty, Battlefield, etc. But mostly the problems are with people who take an idea and run in the wrong direction. For example, taking a stylish noir stealth/hacking game and then setting the next one in space.
Hey!
Why won't you learn, Tom? Why? Can you think of any particularly egregious examples of where the developer has taken a wrong-headed approach to sequels? P.S. Yes, I am actually looking forward to Heat Signature. Jizz Central.
Don't stress that Heat Signature is not a sequel to Contact. I would agree if it had gone way off track, if that was my intention.
It would have been an amazing twist, though, wouldn't it? It was just Conrad in Bionic Armour at the end, and that's what you've been playing all along.
Absolution is the most sort of heartbreaking example of that, because Blood Money was the quintessential example of sequels getting it right. And they'd tinkered around, then experimented, and they refined and refined, and it was getting better. And then they finally nailed it, and they go, yes, we understand what's good about our series, and we've made it, and it's fantastic, and everyone agrees, everyone thinks it's fantastic, and it's really getting there. And then suddenly, Absolution just goes in a totally different direction, where it's really about the story in Hitman. It really needs to be more story driven. And I think most of the assassinations take place in cutscenes, so that the player doesn't really get to do them, they just have to watch. So the player's job is going to be to get to a series of doors that will then trigger these cutscenes, and that'll be most of the game. And then also change the disguise system so that it's merged with stealth, such that if you're in disguise, you actually want to be seen trying to hide from people, so that they won't get suspicious, because then you can just dive behind something, and then they're like their belief of your disguise is confused with their inability to see you. And so someone they can kind of see wearing a chef's outfit, hiding behind a laundry basket is less suspicious than someone just walking past normally.
Yeah, I think Jez Central's picked the best example of this already. And I feel like playing Absolution that they wanted to bring it to a mainstream market and say, and with all the connotations that mainstream games have, like, mainstream games need to have a strong central narrative and a main hero character and lots of cutscenes, and it needs to be, there needs to be scripted bits where a helicopter chases you, because that's what Call of Duty does, and that's what the audience really wants, perhaps. And it feels as though they chased that over their own kind of ideas about what Hitman should be, and fucked it right up.
There's also stuff like, I feel like the more successful a series is, the harder of time it has learning from itself, because it doesn't really get to, I don't know if it's successful, then it automatically gets a bunch of criticism just because you'll get that many people playing it, that of course there'll be some people who hate it. So it's not lack of feedback. It's not like they don't have any complaints. I think it's just they don't have any way of knowing what to listen to. They don't, like, if you just made millions of dollars on your thing, no matter what complaints you get, you're always going to be thinking, well, they're wrong because it sold really well. And got really good reviews. I'm thinking that my drink right now is resting on a Grand Theft Auto 5 DVD case. And, I feel like that game, has the open world got a higher fidelity and nicer to look at and, cooler in some ways, but all of the game elements and all of the story elements just got worse and worse and worse. But not that much worse, because I didn't like them in GTA 4 anyway. I've only ever been playing it for the open world, really. And I feel like, maybe it's just a game for a certain kind of person, and I'm just not that person. But from the outside perspective, I'm just like, why aren't you learning anything? Why is your dialogue so fucking awful? Why can't you write anything good?
It seems like a lot of the time, developers just learn from whatever the most popular thing is at that time. Like, it seems like with Hitman, for example, they just went, okay, everyone really liked Blood Money, but Uncharted sold more. And Uncharted was, really cinematic and scripted. And, we're not going to turn it into Call of Duty, but we could reasonably probably turn it into Uncharted and turn Tomb Raider into Uncharted. And, and turn Star Wars into Uncharted, if you're, which that's what's going to do at
13,
yeah,
probably. Yeah, I mean, it's chasing that audience that probably isn't there for Hitman. Why is Hitman gonna really be that guy? Why would Agent 47 be Lara Croft? Is he ever gonna be that? Why chase that? It's like Splinter Cell. Similar thing happened. Chaos Theory turned into Double Agent, which turned into, they've become better in their own new niche they've found, but that new niche is a very, very, mainstream friendly, attempt to be mainstream friendly, I think.
It's the Jack Bauer sim.
Yeah.
I wonder how much is just that they're a publicly traded company and so constantly trying to grow. Because Square Enix, who did Tomb Raider and Hitman, also did Deus Ex Human Revolution. And that was a really fucking great example of getting a whole new team to make a game which was totally in the spirit of...
So the development teams are different there. So Eidos Montreal made Hitman Human Revolution. Sorry, God. Deus Ex Human Revolution. Whereas Hitman Absolution was still made by IO, who did Hitman games. But the Human Revolution is a really interesting example because before Absolution, the go-to example for this was Deus Ex 2, right? So Invisible War is the laughing stock of sequels that got it wrong. I actually think Invisible War is really, really good. Not nearly as good as Deus Ex. Almost everything it changes is bad, but still, when you're coming from Deus Ex, you can take many steps backwards and still come up with an amazing game. And it was silly and kind of broken in some superficial ways, but allowed you to do some really cool things and had really interesting tools. And I should probably do a playthrough of it at some point and explain this. But that was definitely a case of they just made the game that the fans of their previous game didn't want, and they caught all of the flack in the world for that.
I do sometimes wonder also if sometimes fans are stupid. Because, for example, the recent Devil May Cry game, DMC,
so good.
Devil May Cry,
such a good game,
which was made by Ninja Theory. So again, a different development studio from who made the previous Devil May Cry games. But they totally understood what was cool about that character, cool about that combat system, made a new combat system, which I like more than previous games, and then had just beautiful art direction, beautiful style, great sense of humor. Every level's really inventive. It's gorgeous. And from the moment it was announced, the kind of hardcore Devil May Cry fans were like, fuck this game, they're ruining it, I hate this.
He hasn't got white hair anymore.
They never changed their minds about it at any point. And it feels like they're just wrong. Yeah. They're just wrong.
I love DMC. We don't have enough of that kind of game on PC. Like, we're not going to get many Platinum games, we're not going to get Bayonetta. So DMC is going to have to be our flagship kind of example of that genre, really. But it's a fucking good one. It's a fucking good combat system that takes Devil May Cry 3's very separate skill trees and puts them all onto one control system where you can just pull a sight out 1 second and pull a giant sword out the next and then pull chakrams out in the next moment. Brilliant game. But yeah, you're right. Fans were wrong. Wrong to hate that. But they played with the fans' hatred within the game. There's a bit where, like, he goes through a ridiculous cutscene, Dante does, and he's got this new he's got this trim cut hairstyle, and he's got kind of like fake kind of Britpop trench coat, and there's a bit where he comes out of the fight scene, and then the end of a mop falls on his head and gives him the old standard, and he catches himself in a reflection, and he goes, nah, that didn't happen, and he throws it away and then stabs a demon in the eye, and it's just like, fair play, well done. This is one of those things, maybe it won't sell very well, but I, as a critic, will love you forever for making this thing.
That's all the questions we have, and therefore also all the time for questions that we have. If you'd like to send in some of your own, you can do so by emailing us to
questions@crateandcrowbar.com.
Or you can tweet us at Crate and Crowbar on the Twitters. Or you can tweet us individually. I am at Gonnas, Gonnas.
I'm at Pentadact, Pentadat.
I'm at PCG Ludo, which is Ludo. And I would add, if you want to see Marsh and I faff around in Dark Souls 2 killing demons, then there's a YouTube series happening right now on the Crate and Crowbar YouTube channel.
And Crate and Crowbar itself on Twitter. Wait, you already said that.
On
the forum, though. crateandcrowbar.com/forum, you can also post questions there.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody!